Nerds, return with us to Middle-earth as we review and discuss the Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, episode 204, entitled Eldest, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Paula.
As always, if you want to jump ahead of the intro to our analysis or ratings, see the chapter links below. So we are recording this late this week on Thursday morning, which sucks because we have to get it out and edit it, but it does mean that we have the episode title, which I mentioned already is Eldest, and also the spoiler-free logline from Amazon, and we don't have to make it up ourselves based on our notes. So the spoiler-free logline that they released just this morning is: the stranger finds what he's been searching for. Arondir and Isildur search for Theo, and Galadriel and Elrond walk into a trap. So, Paul, what are your spoilery thoughts about this episode?
I enjoyed it. It always gives you a little bit more of the storyline. I do like how now you're getting a bit more of the stranger, because I feel like up until now, really, it still felt like you didn't know much about him. I like that he's just like stepping into who he is and really trying to figure things out. And just put it this way.
Yeah,
but I thought it was good.
Okay, I think I'm mixed on the episode. So there's still some tension between Elrond and Galadriel, who's still a bit unresolved. And I will say that at this point, I've actually seen all 8 episodes. I feel like this episode also had some unnecessary detours that seemed to be solely there to prolong the narrative. There is some good set design in a particular place when we get there. When we actually do the breakdown, I can talk about specifically that area, even though I had other issues with that part of the episode. There's also a bit of action in this episode. There aren't just people sitting around in rooms talking to each other, which is great, because a lot of the last couple episodes were basically just that. There is seems to be like a lack of clarity on the passage of time, though. When they want to stretch things, they have people walk across the land, and because these things are miles apart from each other, but when they don't, people are across the map the next day. I feel like this episode had a few too many plot lines to juggle. So there's the stranger, which you mentioned, which you probably liked a little bit more than I did. And like I said, when we get into the spoiler breakdown, I can get into why that's not jiving with me. There's the Galadriel Elrond stuff. Of course, the stranger is connected to the Harfoot, so that's also in this episode. And then there's the Isildur, Arondir, Astrid, Theo stuff, which makes it feel a bit overstuffed. There's, I think, looking at my notes for the breakdown, there's at least 14 scenes in this episode. We're jumping around a lot, which, like I said, makes it seem a little bit overstuffed. And the pacing is slower when we aren't in those action scenes. So
yeah, it is slower, which is why I'm glad that they're releasing more than one episode at a time so far, because otherwise it just would have been a bit of a torture, I feel like.
So did they only release one episode today, or did they release more than one? I think they only released one episode today.
Oh, it was just one?
Yeah.
I thought it was...
No, I think it only released the one episode today.
So but I guess it is torture a little bit.
Yes, everyone has to wait a week to see episode 5. Like I said, I've seen all of them. I don't know if you've gotten through all of them already yourself. Did you watch all the way through?
I have 2 more left.
Yeah. So what rating would you give this episode?
I will give it a 7.
You're gonna give it a 7?
I give it a 7. It felt like a tease in a way, again, because there's so many plot lines, but the little bit that they showed for each of these plot lines made you want more.
Right. Okay. So you're gonna give it a dinner party. So there are portions of this episode that I want to give an 8, and there are portions that I want to give a 6 because they were just boring to me. So I'm in the same place that you are. I'm giving it a dinner party or a 7 or a scale. And if you're unfamiliar with our scale, it's down below in the description. Despite the great action and instead of people sitting around, like I said, there were still some people sitting around just talking, specifically in Rhun, which we can get to when we actually start breaking down about stuff I really didn't care about. So that's what dragged down the episode for me. Yeah. And anyway, so into the specifics, we gotta start recapping it. So we're gonna start recapping and breaking this down. If you haven't seen the episode, go see the episode. Spoilers ahead. All right, so we start the episode in Lindon. Galadriel and Elrond, like I said, haven't resolved their issues, and they're setting out to a region and he asks her for an archer and 2 swordsmen, and Galadriel is sore, and she's, you sure you trust me with a recommendation? And Elrond's not really having any of her guff. He's like, the High King urged making you my lieutenant, but if you think it's beneath you, I could choose someone else. So they're still sniping at each other. They're still upset with each other. The first episode of the season, when they were coming from they got from a Region to Lindon in like less than a scene. The entire episode trying to get to a Region in this one. Now, I understand that there's an obstacle, but when they want to get there quickly, they go on horseback. They don't walk to a Region. And it just seems like the writers are just interjecting to stretch out so that Sauron can continue creating rings. It makes no sense whatsoever that all these people are not on horseback, but whatever. We jump over to what they call the Axa Bridge, which he mentions in the first scene. So this bridge does not exist in any of the lore. I looked it up, but the best that I can guess, and this is an educated guess because of other things that are mentioned in the episode, this is around the river Barrow-downs or Brandywine. If you're just looking at the map, how to get to Eregion, this is probably the most likely place that the bridge is out, especially since they're going to go down to the Barrow-downs right after this. So the bridge is destroyed by lightning, and Galadriel thinks that it's Sauron who did it. They have to go north, which is going to add 2 weeks, or they can go south through the hills of Torin. Galadriel gets a vision from her ring, Nanya. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'll put a correction in the video, telling her that there is danger in the southern path, and Sauron wants them to go that way. And it's likely the path that the messengers took, as we'll see later on. Elrond is wary of the ring, doesn't want to take her counsel or the counsel of the ring, so they go south, and he wagers that Sauron is probably watching both paths anyway. So then we jump over to Rhun, which is, like I said, the part of the episode that I have more of an issue with. So the stranger was parted from Nori and Poppy 2 episodes back, right? He comes upon Tom Bombadil, which is who the episode is actually named after, the eldest or the oldest person in Middle-earth. He's not a human. It's really unclear what he is. He shows up in the book The Hobbit. He speaks in riddles like Yoda, and the map that he asks him about flies out of his hand. He goes to a tree, and then he's swallowed up by the tree, which is how they start their interaction, which is weird. And then we go to another part of Rhun where Poppy and Nori wake up, and the Easterlings are still chasing them, and they run into Nobody, a store. Poppy and Nobody, also known as Mary and Mac, take a liking to each other, and they ask him about the water and his village, and they persuade him to take them to his village. Nobody gives them a talking to about their leader and gives them 3 of the 4 rules. So that comes up later on, that he didn't give them all the rules. So we see the stores set. This is what I was mentioning, that the storage set was actually pretty interesting. There was actually a lot of interesting set design. They were trying to extrapolate back to what the hobbits will look like, especially in this episode. I guess that's interesting, but this is also where my frustration with the episode is. I'm not sure who cares this much about the hobbits. I don't need to know the entire lineage of the hobbits. It's not dramatic in that sense.
I liked it. I thought it was cute, and it just gave a bit of a background. And I think it was good for even Poppy and Nori, just to kind of...
I guess so, but I don't know that it's as dramatically interesting as the stuff that's going on with Sauron. Honestly, this show could cut the stranger and the halflings out altogether, because the stranger, Gandalf doesn't show up until the Third Age, after all this stuff is done. After the last war, cuts off Sauron's finger, takes the ring, and he doesn't think. After that is when Gandalf shows up. I think they added this stuff because they think people are enamored by the hobbits, and I guess some people are. You said you like them, but like, they could cut off all that stuff from this show for me, and it would be tighter, and it would make more sense to me, because we're jumping around a lot, and my patience for Tom Bombadil and his riddle talk is very short.
That was frustrating to me. I just felt like his whole interaction with Bobby could have been made
it was a lot of scenes going back to his house, and he's basically saying nothing. He's just talking in riddles. He's just like trying to get him to figure it out for himself. So they talk to the leader, and the leader corrects them that they're not Harfoots, and they live in the holes in the stone instead of holes in the Hobbit Hills. The leader asks them to plead their case for not sending them back to the Easterlings. They mention a little wizard, and the leader thinks that they're talking about the Dark Wizard. Then we go to another part of Rhun. This is back at the dreadful fortress, or terrible fortress, depending on how you translate the Elvish. The tracker reports back that the Ishtar conjured a sandstorm and killed 2 of his men, and the Ishtar is heading north towards the Hermit, which I assume is Tom Bombadil. The Dark Wizard asks about the halflings, and the Easterling says he'll hunt them down. The wizard says that he'll tend to the Ishtar himself. Then I think we go back to North Rhun with Tom Bombadil. He gets him out of the tree and it spits him up. It lets him take a bath, and the stranger hears a woman singing, but Tom says there's no one else there and gives him his clothes washed. So Tom Bombadil, I think in The Hobbit, actually does have a wife, so maybe that's who they were referring to, but his wife isn't supposed to be as old as him, so maybe that's why they didn't include her, because if she showed up here, she'd be long dead by the time that he actually shows up in The Hobbit. So I don't know what they were doing there. Maybe they were hinting at a future her. I don't know. So he asks him about the stars, and he says that the stars are newcomers. This planet Ardor is not that old. Stars are billions of years old, but whatever. He calls the stars newcomers because he's supposed to be the eldest. And then he turns the map into a bread, and the stranger asks what he is, and Tom says that he's the eldest before the rivers and the trees. Says he was in Rhun when it was green. They talk about the tree, and Tom says that the stranger should have just asked for the branch, and then Tom also stokes the fire just by breathing. The stranger asks him to teach him and says that he wields things like they belong to him, and Tom says that the things belong to themselves. And then the stranger asks him to teach him how to wield a staff, and then again Tom just rebuffs him and says that you're not worthy of a staff. This is the part that I'm saying that was a little annoying. Like, he asks him for things and he just says tells him the opposite, or he just tells him that what you want is not really what you want. Yoda is far less frustrating, and he actually talks in riddles that I don't know. Yeah, it makes more sense. They call then some Easterlings. They find out that the Easterlings are still hunting them, and then the stranger asks about them, and Tom says that he isn't the first Ishtar to eat honey at his fire. The other was the Dark Wizard who sought to control the magic, and now he controls all of Rhun and hungers for more, and he thinks that he will ally with Sauron. This is the first time that he actually says something that is actually definitive, as when they start talking about the Dark Wizard. He said, it seems to be that the reason that the writers added Gandalf to this age is to have him fight the Dark Wizard so he doesn't combine with Sauron, depriving Sauron of an ally until the Third Age. And when he does connect with the wizard, he connects with Saruman in the Third Age. But I guess that's where they're going to go with this. So I think I mentioned in our breakdowns, I think for the second episode, that there were 2 other wizards. So there's Radagast, there's Gandalf, and there's Saruman, which all show up either in The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. But there are also 2 blue wizards that went east and they weren't heard from again. So I assume one of these is going to be one of the blue wizards. So I guess the story that they're making up for this show is that he had to fight another wizard before he had to fight Sauron in The Lord of the Rings. But I don't know that they had to make this up. They didn't need to bring Gandalf into this age. Anyway, Tom says that the stranger's task is to face both Sauron and the Dark Wizard. And I guess Sauron he's going to face in the Third Age. So anyway, then we jump to like I said, the elves went south on Gortod. Sorry, I cannot speak Elvish well. But in English, it's just called the Barrow-downs. So this is an ancient burial site for dead lords and kings. They find the messenger from Lindon, the dead body. Like I said, it looks like Sauron blew out that bridge and also animated these undead people so that anyone trying to get to Eregion would get killed by these undead people. So they find the horse. They don't find the messenger. The messenger was probably pulled underneath. The company is attacked by undead and the black elf is pulled underneath. So there's been talk that all the Nodal elves, like the highest elves, are all white. So they actually have a black elf here and they kill him off immediately. He's not a Sylvan elf. He's like part of the higher elves, and they let him be pulled underneath, but whatever. So Galadriel says these are burial wraiths and they attack, but the weapons are ineffective and they simply reform themselves. They're able to defeat them by using the weapons that they were buried with, which is Elrond spends a lot of time in the library. So he knew this lore that the wraiths could be destroyed with their weapons. So Sauron obviously woken these wraiths to kill anyone trying to travel to Eregion, like I said, through Lindon. Then we jump to the heart. A lot of this episode is in the woods somewhere, so you have to figure out where they are. Like I said, I'm making educated guesses. Then we jump to, I think, Lebenin Forest, which is right outside of Pelagiar. Our search party is including Arondir and Isildur searches for Theo in the Wildmen's camp, and Arondir finds that they left their weapons, all their possessions, possessions, and Arondir also finds a dead man's arm with a flame still lit. Then we go to Pelagiar, and the Southlanders want to attack the Wildmen, but Arondir doesn't think that men attack the Wildmen camp, and Astrid suggests going north to find them, which piques Arondir's interest. She's been looking for her loved ones. They resolve this mystery whether or not she's going to be a bad person a little bit quickly, and I think they have to resolve it quickly just because they have so many storylines. If we didn't have any of the stuff in Rhun, they could have dragged this out a little bit more, and you would just wonder whether or not she was a good guy. But they resolve it the next time we see them, because we can't do something interesting with it because they have so many storylines. Astrid gets closer to Isildur, and Arondir exposes her as a Wildman who has the mark of Adder. He says they would have caught her if she didn't come in with Isildur. He just assumed that he vouched for her, and he wants to use her to lead them to the others. She suggested going north, and this is my educated guess. The forest north of Pelagiar is Ithilien, so maybe they're there, maybe they're not. Like I said, educated guess. So Isildur confronts Astrid for deceiving him, and she says something very logical here, right? She says, would you rather I just die in Mordor? And he pauses there. He says he doesn't know, because I think she's basically saying here that she took the oath so they wouldn't stab her in the stomach like we saw in the first episode.
Yeah, that it was just
surviving.
It was just
exactly.
So that's what you got to do in order to survive.
And then Arondir finds the same leaves that he found at the Wildman site, the white leaves on the trail, and he saw in the Wildman camp. And then we jump to a quick scene with Theo, and we see that he's trapped at the top of a tree with some Wildmen. And then we go to some marshlands, and Astrid asks to be unbound, and Isildur gets stuck in the mud and pulled down, and Arondir gets pulled down with him. It looks like Ashley's going to run away, but she comes back with a stick. They try to give it to them. What actually happens is the slug beast takes a hold of it instead and surfaces from the mud, and Arondir then cuts them out of their stomach. And I think this is also something that they created for the show because they didn't have a name for it, and he just calls it dinner. Then we go back to Rhun again. Then we talk about Poppy and Nori are bound up or tied up here because the Stores think that they're with the Dark Wizard, and they're going to cast them out at the sunrise. And then she mentions a leader called Barrow, who we saw die in the last season, who apparently dreamed of a place with endless streams and water and rolling hills. And so they're obviously talking about the Shire here. So I guess the lore that they're making up here is that the Harfolks were actually Stores, and then they wandered and they eventually found the Shire. So Poppy said they never found what they were looking for and they're still wandering. And then an Easterling enters the camp and hits the leader and asks for Harfoots. They say they will return with the Dark Wizard and warns them that they'll know why the Easterlings wear their masks. Okay, coming up close to the end of the episode, been jumping around quite a bit. We go to what I think is Harwell River, getting closer to a region. Harwell River, because that's right outside of the Barrow-downs, or in Elvish is Ithilien River. So Galadriel has a conversation with Elrond basically about the ring, telling him that she believes that it's her not deceiving her, and questions whether the cost would be too great. And she rejoins that she hasn't reached that point yet because the suffering that Sauron will bring terrifies her even more than fear of the ring. And then Elrond mentions that his father foresaw that Celebrimor's life would be in his hands. And then Galadriel asks him to make sure that he puts opposing Sauron above her life, and he agrees to that. And then they hear some drums, and then we jump back to the Ithilien marshlands. Arondir leaves the key behind for Isildur. He frees Astrid and she takes his sword, believing that she can't be forgiven. Arondir draws his bow and Isildur says that he won't let them cast her out. And then the Ents show up. You were right last week. Last week? Yes, last week. Sorry. We've been through so many episodes. You were right when you mentioned that the Ents were showing up. And if you remember the movies that had lost the Entwives, so there's actually an Entwife in this scene. And I think she's the one who hits Astrid for wielding a sword. The wife asks if Arondir's ever put axe to wood at life, and Arondir says that he has. I think that refers to season 1 when Arondir was trapped and he had to escape. He had to destroy a tree and he felt really bad about it. She attacks him too. Arondir says that the sword isn't for felling trees. The Ents ask what does it fell, and then Isildur said it's for felling orcs. And then the Endwife says that she believes they are all alike, and she mentions all the things that orcs were doing. They're basically marching towards a Eregion and destroying trees along the way. Arondir gives condolences and also promises that the trees of the woods are going to be left alone. Free Theo and the Wildman and Astrid comes to in Isildur's arms, and her betrothed that she was looking for, apparently it wasn't a story, she was actually disconnected from someone in the Wildman's group. So Theo thanks him for coming to his aid and also keeping his promise. This is another storyline that I think could have probably stepped on for at least 2 more episodes, but they had to get rid of it because this is not the main point of the season. It would have been more interesting if they actually created a conflict between the two of them in one episode to resolve it in the next episode. I think they just have too many characters to actually let that breathe. Arondir goes after the orcs and Adar, and Theo keeps his promise and returns to Pelagiar. So that's the end of that storyline for now anyway. And then Elrond's small company comes upon the army of the orcs marching towards Eregion. They wonder together if the fallen elf who commands the orcs is in league with Sauron or at war with him. And Elrond wants to go back to Lindon to warn the High King before they sail to Mordor, because their plan was to confront Adar and the orcs by going to, so they won't be able to defend Eregion. So they're discovered so the company can get away. Galadriel creates a distraction, sacrificing herself, and gives a ring to Elrond for safekeeping on his journey back to Lindon. Galadriel is captured by Adar and the orcs. And that's it. A lot of jumping around. So any final thoughts about the episode?
I enjoyed it. It's a little bit, another piece to this, to the puzzle. But I will say about the stranger, a thought that keeps coming back, is it really Gandalf? Could it be Saruman? Because wasn't he good before he turned?
Well, I guess it could be Saruman. Yes, technically it could be Saruman.
It could be him, and then, because he was also friends with Gandalf, and then he gifted the staff to Gandalf.
Yeah, it could be. There are some parts of the development of this show that are just disappointing from a story point of view, and that would have been interesting, but I think there were some decisions that were made not necessarily from a storytelling point of view. They were made from a marketing point of view. People know that Gandalf is popular with fans. They know that hobbits are popular with fans, so that's why those two people were added. So I think it's highly unlikely that it's going to be Saruman. It would be more interesting. That would be a better story, but they are adding them. I think they added hobbit-ish people, and they added Gandalf, even though Gandalf doesn't show up for another age, because they know that they're popular with fans. I think the show would have been good without both of those elements, but I doubt that they're going to do something interesting with them, because they weren't added for interesting reasons. I think they were added for marketing reasons, and I don't know. Like I said, it's possible, but yeah. Anyway, so good.
Yeah. And the other thing that was just annoying, like you said earlier, just how long it's been taking Elrond and his company to get to their destination. I'm just like feeling like they're gonna make it take the whole season.
Yeah, which is what I was concerned about 2 episodes back. Are they gonna have making the rings the entire season? Are they gonna make getting to the whole season? And I'm not gonna comment on that because, like I said, I've seen all the episodes, but that was my concern 2 episodes back. But yeah, they definitely are stretching things out, and some interesting stuff coming up, but I am annoyed by some of the decisions that they made. I don't think I've had as much of an issue as I did with the first season, but there are some issues that exist from the first season that carry on to this season. But yeah, anyway, that is what we think, but we want to know what you guys think. So comment down below with your thoughts, and if you found this review useful, don't forget to like the video and share and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of film and TV. On to the next one. See you guys. Bye.